The grand chamber of the Imperial War Council stretched wide and tall, its walls made of polished crystal that gleamed under the light of 3 suns streaming through massive windows. Fleet Commander Zaxthor stood in the center of the room, his forearms held rigid at his sides. His gray-scaled skin bore the marks of countless battles, scars that crossed his chest and face like a map of warfare. He had served the Galactic Empire for 40 cycles, fought in 17 major campaigns, and never once had he felt fear like he felt now. Around him sat the High Command, 12 of the most powerful military leaders in the known galaxy. They lounged on floating seats, their expressions ranging from bored to mildly curious. At the head of the council sat Imperial Admiral Vornath, a massive creature with 6 eyes and skin that shimmered like oil on water. He looked at Zaxthor the way one might look at an amusing pet. "Fleet Commander," Vornath said, his voice booming through the chamber, "you requested this emergency session. You claimed it was a matter of galactic security. We are listening." Zaxthor took a deep breath. His translator device hummed as he spoke, converting his native clicks and whistles into the common tongue. "Honored Council, I come before you to warn against the proposed invasion of the Sol system. The species that lives there, the humans, they are not like other primitives we have encountered. They are dangerous beyond measure." Several council members laughed. One of them, a floating jellyfish-like being named Qualix, pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. "Dangerous. Commander, we have reviewed the reports. These humans barely have faster-than-light travel. They have no planetary shields. Their weapons are crude fusion-based systems. Their largest fleet numbers less than 50 vessels." Zaxthor's main arms clenched into fists. "I have fought beside human mercenaries in the border skirmishes of Sector 7. I have seen what they are capable of. I have seen things that still haunt my sleep cycles." "Tell us then," Vornath said, leaning forward. "What makes these primitives so special?" The old warrior closed his eyes, remembering. 3 cycles ago, my battalion was pinned down on Kepler Station. We were outnumbered 5 to 1 by the Ravager clans. Our shields had failed. Our ammunition was nearly gone. We prepared for honorable death, as is our way. Then the human mercenaries arrived. He paused, his voice dropping lower. There were only 12 of them. 12 humans against hundreds of Ravagers. They should have retreated. Any sane species would have retreated. Instead, they charged into the battle screaming their war cries. I watched one human, a female, continue fighting with a broken arm. She held her weapon with one hand and kept firing even as blood poured from her wounds. When her gun ran empty, she used it as a club. When that broke, she used her fists. The council chamber had grown quiet. Zaxthor continued. Another human took a plasma bolt to the chest that would have killed any of our soldiers instantly. He fell and we thought he was dead, but 30 seconds later he stood back up. His armor was melted, his skin burned, and he just picked up his weapon and kept fighting. He survived because humans have this thing they call adrenaline. Their bodies produce it in combat, and it makes them ignore pain, ignore injury, ignore everything except the mission. Fascinating biology, Qualix said. But surely numbers and superior technology would overcome such traits. Zaxthor shook his head, all 4 hands spreading wide. You do not understand. At the end of that battle, 11 of the 12 humans survived. The Ravagers fled from an enemy that was a fraction of their size. Do you know what the humans said afterwards? They said it was acceptable casualties. 1 death out of 12, and they called it acceptable. Admiral Vornath shifted in his seat. Commander, I respect your service, but you are asking us to abandon our plans based on your encounter with a handful of mercenaries. The Empire has 3,000 warships. We have conquered 47 star systems. We have made 73 species submit to our rule. What makes you think these humans could possibly threaten us? Because I researched them, Zaxthor said, his voice rising with urgency. After the battle, I accessed every piece of information I could find about humans. Do you know what I discovered? In their short history as a unified species, they have fought over 15,000 major wars, not skirmishes, not border disputes, wars. They have developed over 6,000 different words for warfare in their various languages. They have poisoned their own air, burned their own forests, and split the very atoms of matter just to create better weapons. He pulled out a data tablet and projected an image above the council table. It showed a mushroom cloud rising above a ruined city. This is what humans did to themselves before they even left their home planet. They created weapons that could destroy all life on their world, and then they built thousands of them. They aimed these weapons at their own cities, at their own children, and they called it peace through mutually assured destruction. The council members stared at the image. For the first time, some of them looked uncomfortable. Zaxthor pressed on. They have a saying, death before dishonor. They would rather die than submit. Every single one of them believes this. It is woven into their culture, their history, their very identity. When you invade their home, they will not surrender. They will not negotiate. They will fight until every last one of them is dead, and they will take as many of us with them as they possibly can. Enough, Vornath's voice cracked like thunder. Fleet Commander, your concerns are noted. But the decision has already been made. The humans will be given a choice, submit to Imperial rule or face the consequences. We have already sent the ultimatum. They have 30 cycles to respond. Zaxthor felt his heart sink. Then I beg you to reconsider. Send diplomats. Offer them partnership instead of conquest. Anything but invasion. The Admiral stood, his massive form towering over the assembly. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We bring order to chaos. We bring civilization to the barbaric. The humans will learn their place in the galactic hierarchy, just as every other species has learned. They are not like every other species, Zaxthor said quietly. This council is dismissed, Vornath declared. Fleet Commander, you are relieved of your duties pending a psychological evaluation. Your trauma from the border skirmishes has clearly affected your judgment. Zaxthor removed his command insignia and placed it on the council table. I resign my commission effective immediately. I will not be part of this disaster. As he walked toward the exit, he turned back one final time. The council members had already begun discussing logistics and fleet movements, treating the invasion as a simple matter of scheduling. None of them looked at him. You have never seen them when they are defending their home, Zaxthor said to the empty air. I pray to all the gods of all our worlds that you never have to learn what I tried to teach you today. He left the chamber, and behind him, the Empire continued its plans. The countdown to invasion had begun, and no one was listening to the only warrior who truly understood what was coming. The Imperial First Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 warships, each one larger than a city block, their hulls gleaming with the purple and gold colors of the Galactic Empire. They arranged themselves in a perfect formation, a show of overwhelming force designed to make any resistance seem pointless. Admiral Vornath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the primitive inner system on his screens. The third planet from the star glowed blue and green, so small and fragile looking. Around it, he could see the crude orbital stations that humans had built, along with scattered vessels that barely qualified as warships in his eyes. Scan complete. Admiral, his communications officer reported. We count 47 human military vessels in the system. Their largest ship is 1/10 the mass of our smallest destroyer. They have no planetary shields. Their weapons appear to be basic kinetic and fusion-based systems. Vornath felt satisfaction wash through him. Open a channel to their leadership. Within minutes, a human face appeared on his screen. The creature was small, with only 2 arms and 2 eyes, its skin a pale brown color. It wore a military uniform covered in colorful decorations that meant nothing to the Admiral. I am Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said, its voice surprisingly steady. We have received your ultimatum. We request permission to negotiate terms. Vornath smiled, showing rows of crystalline teeth. There are no terms to negotiate. You will submit to Imperial authority. You will dismantle your military. You will pay tribute. You will accept our governance. These are not requests. Admiral Chen's face remained calm. We are a peaceful species, but we value our independence. Surely we can find a diplomatic solution that benefits both our peoples. Your independence ended the moment we entered your system, Vornath replied. To demonstrate the futility of resistance, we will now destroy one of your orbital installations. Consider it a lesson in Imperial power. Wait, Chen said. But Vornath had already closed the channel. He pointed at the tactical display. Target the mining station orbiting their 4th planet, the one they call Phobos Station. Fire when ready. 3 Imperial destroyers broke formation and glided toward Mars, their weapons charged with a brilliant blue glow. The human station was small and defenseless, used for processing minerals from the Martian surface. Vornath could see tiny ships fleeing from it, but they were too slow. The destroyers fired. Beams of concentrated energy struck Phobos Station from 3 directions. The station's hull glowed white-hot, then orange. Then it simply came apart in an expanding cloud of debris and flame. 3,000 human lives ended in an instant. Excellent, Vornath said. Now they understand. Open the channel again. Admiral Chen's face reappeared, but something had changed in the humans' eyes. They were harder now, colder. You just killed 3,000 civilians. That station was clearly marked as non-military. That was a warning, Vornath said. Submit now, or we will destroy another station every hour until you comply. The human was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was very soft. I need 48 hours to consult with our government and prepare our response. Vornath laughed. You may have your 48 hours. Use them to prepare your surrender documents. He closed the channel and turned to his officers. See how they beg for time? They are already broken. This will be the easiest conquest in Imperial history. But if Vornath had been watching human communications instead of celebrating, he would have seen something very different happening on Earth. The footage from Phobos Station played on every screen across the planet. 3,000 faces were shown, the workers who had died. Their families were interviewed. Their children cried for parents who would never come home. And something ancient and terrible woke up in the human species. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed within an hour. Young and old alike lined up to join the military. Factory workers volunteered for double shifts. Scientists abandoned their peaceful research to work on weapons development. The phrase "Remember Phobos" appeared everywhere. Spray-painted on walls, printed on shirts, broadcast on every news channel. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Earth's lunar base, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire solar system. Around him, his staff worked with focused intensity. Status report, Chen said. All civilian ships have been recalled to Earth orbit, his operations officer replied. Engineering teams are installing weapon systems on any vessel that can mount them. We have 32 cargo haulers being converted to missile platforms. The factories on Luna and Earth are producing munitions at maximum capacity. What about the experimental weapons? Chen asked. A woman in a scientist's uniform stepped forward. The railgun satellites are deployed throughout the asteroid belt. The Empire's sensors are designed to detect energy weapons and traditional missiles. They should not see our kinetic impactors until it is too late. We have also completed the modifications to our nuclear arsenal. Chen nodded. And our people? Sir, his communications officer said quietly. We have over 10 million volunteers. We cannot process them all. We have civilians offering their personal ships for military service. We have retired veterans demanding to be reinstated. We have teenagers lying about their age to enlist. The Admiral looked at the images of Earth on his screen, the planet he had sworn to protect. He thought about the 3,000 dead on Phobos Station. He thought about his own daughter, 7 years old, sleeping peacefully below while an alien fleet waited to enslave or destroy them all. Good, he said simply. Make sure every volunteer understands what we are facing. Make sure they know this might be a one-way trip, and make sure they all know that we are not fighting to win. We are fighting so that if we lose, we make the cost so high that no alien empire ever looks at Earth again. Far from the Sol system, on a quiet neutral station, Zaxthor sat in his small quarters watching the news feeds. He had connections throughout the galaxy, and he had tapped into both Imperial and human communications. He saw Vornath celebrating the destruction of Phobos Station. He saw the Admiral's confidence that humanity would surrender within days. Then he switched to the human feeds. He saw the faces of the dead. He saw the crowds gathering in cities across Earth. He saw the lines at recruitment centers. He saw the weapons being manufactured, the ships being armed, the preparations for war, and he saw the speeches. Human leaders addressing their people, not with promises of victory, but with promises of vengeance. Not with hopes for survival, but with vows to make the invaders bleed for every inch of Earth they tried to take. Zaxthor closed his 4 eyes and felt a deep sadness. He had tried to warn them. He had begged the Council to see what he had seen, to understand what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. They are not preparing to surrender, he whispered to the empty room. They are preparing for war, and the Empire has no idea what is coming. He began composing a message to Vornath, one final attempt to make the Admiral see reason. But even as he wrote it, he knew it was too late. The deadline would expire in 48 hours, and then the galaxy would learn the same lesson he had learned in the border skirmishes. Humans did not surrender. They did not submit. They did not break. They only fought harder. The 48 hours ended with silence. Admiral Vornath waited for the human surrender message that never came. Instead, at precisely the deadline moment, every human military vessel in the Sol system activated their drives and began moving toward the Imperial fleet. Scanners show all 47 human warships are approaching, the tactical officer reported. They are not broadcasting any surrender signals. Vornath felt a flash of irritation. Fools. Very well, we will teach them the price of defiance. All ships, battle formation. Prepare to engage. The Imperial fleet moved forward. 300 warships against 47. It should have been a massacre. It should have been over in minutes. It was not. The first indication that something was wrong came when the Imperial vanguard entered the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Sensors detected nothing unusual. The asteroids were simple rocks, floating in space as they had for billions of years. Then the rocks began to move. What the Imperial sensors had dismissed as natural asteroids were actually human railgun platforms. Their energy signatures so low they appeared as background noise. They had been placed throughout the belt over the past 48 hours, hidden in plain sight. The platforms fired. Not energy weapons that the Imperial shields were designed to stop, but solid metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Chunks of dense metal the size of cars slammed into Imperial cruisers with the force of nuclear weapons. 5 Imperial ships simply ceased to exist in the first salvo. The metal slugs punched through their shields as if they were not there, because the shields were calibrated for energy weapons. The kinetic projectiles did not care about shields. Evasive action, Vornath shouted. Return fire! The Imperial ships began firing their plasma cannons at the asteroids, destroying dozens of them. But for every platform they destroyed, 2 more revealed themselves and fired. The asteroid belt had become a deadly maze, and the Imperial fleet was bleeding. Withdraw the vanguard, Vornath ordered. We will take a different approach vector. But as the Imperial ships turned, the human warships struck. They came in fast. Faster than their engine specifications said they should be able to move. Later analysis would show that the humans had removed all safety systems from their drives, running them at dangerous levels that could cause them to explode. They did not care. The human ships were small, barely a tenth the size of Imperial destroyers. But they moved like insects swarming around the larger vessels, firing their primitive fusion missiles at point-blank range. Imperial gunners tried to track them, but the humans used tactics that no computer model had predicted. They hid in the exhaust plumes of Imperial ships. They timed their attacks to coincide with the railgun strikes. They sacrificed their own ships to create debris fields that blocked Imperial sensors. Vornath watched in growing disbelief as a human frigate, its hull already burning from plasma hits, accelerated directly toward an Imperial heavy cruiser. The cruiser fired everything it had, but the human ship did not change course. It slammed into the cruiser's engineering section at full speed, and both ships vanished in a nuclear fireball. Did they just commit suicide? The tactical officer asked, its voice filled with shock. Report, Vornath demanded. We have lost 18 ships in the past 10 minutes. No, make that 20. 2 more destroyers just took railgun hits. Admiral, the humans are converting their cargo haulers into bomb ships. They are ramming us. Vornath felt something he had not felt in many cycles. Uncertainty. All ships concentrate fire. We have superior numbers. Overwhelm them. The Imperial fleet pressed forward, and for a time it seemed to work. The human vessels were taking heavy damage. Their shields, weak as they were, could not stand up to sustained plasma fire. One by one, human ships began to fall, but they did not run. Even when their ships were dying, when their hulls were breached and fires burned through their corridors, the humans kept fighting. Vornath watched his screens in horror as a human destroyer, with half its crew dead and life support failing, continued to fire on Imperial targets. The ship was basically a wreck, but it would not stop. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. A human pilot ejected from their fighter just before it was destroyed. The pilot should have used their escape pod to flee to safety. Instead, the pilot manually activated their fighter's reactor overload, creating a massive explosion that took out 2 Imperial interceptors. The pilot died in the blast. They had killed themselves just to take 2 enemy fighters with them. Intercept human communications, Vornath ordered. I want to know what they are saying to each other. The communications officer worked quickly, and soon human voices filled the bridge. The translator struggled with their language, but the meaning was clear enough. Tiger 3 is down. I repeat, Tiger 3 is down. Copy that. Tiger 4 moving to cover. All units, remember Phobos. Make every shot count. Hull breach on Deck 7. Sealing bulkheads. We are still in the fight. This is Hammer Squadron. We are out of missiles. Moving to ramming speed. Negative, Hammer Squadron. Disengage and rearm. No time, Command. Enemy dreadnought is targeting the civilian evacuation ships. We are engaging. Vornath listened to the calm voices of humans flying to their deaths. They knew they were going to die. They accepted it. And they kept fighting anyway. Get me casualty reports, he said. The tactical officer looked up from his station, its face pale. We have lost 68 ships. The humans have lost 31. That is impossible. We have 5 times their numbers. Our ships are 10 times their size. Yes, Admiral, but they are trading 1 ship for 2 of ours. Every time. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. Our tactical computers cannot predict their movements because no logical species would make the choices they are making. Vornath sank into his command seat. 68 ships, nearly a quarter of his fleet gone, and the humans were still fighting. Order all ships to pull back to the outer system. We will regroup and reassess. As the Imperial fleet retreated, Vornath finally opened the file that Zaxthor had sent him months ago. The file the Council had ignored. He began to read about human history, about their wars, about their philosophy of warfare. One passage made him stop cold. It was a quote from an ancient human military leader. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Another quote from a different era. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And another. I have not yet begun to fight. Vornath realized with growing horror that Zaxthor had been right. Humans had thousands of years of warfare written into their culture. They had poems about dying in battle. They had songs about last stands. They had holidays celebrating their war dead. They did not just fight wars. They glorified them. They remembered their warriors for thousands of years. They built monuments to the fallen. They told stories of sacrifice that made their children weep with pride. The Imperial fleet had not attacked a primitive species. They had attacked a species that had been preparing for war since they first learned to throw rocks at each other. Get me a channel to Earth, Vornath said quietly. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. The human looked tired with dark circles under its eyes, but those eyes were still hard, still determined. Are you ready to surrender? Chen asked, and Vornath heard no fear in its voice. Only grim satisfaction. We are regrouping for our next attack, Vornath said, trying to sound confident. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. You lost 70 ships today, Admiral. We lost 31. In your military doctrine, a 10% casualty rate is considered unacceptable. You just lost 23% of your fleet, and we are just getting started. The screen went dark before Vornath could respond. In the darkness of his flagship, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists, Admiral Vornath finally understood what Zaxthor had tried to tell the Council. They had not invaded a primitive species. They had kicked a sleeping bear, and now the bear was awake. Admiral Vornath spent 3 days rebuilding his fleet's formation and treating the wounded. 3 days of watching repair crews work around the clock. 3 days of sending encrypted messages to the High Command, requesting reinforcements that would take weeks to arrive. 3 days of studying everything he could find about human military tactics. Nothing prepared him for what he found. The humans had fought a war where they dropped bombs on their own cities. They had fought a war where 20 million soldiers died. They had fought a war where entire generations of young men were wiped out in muddy trenches. And after each war, instead of learning to avoid conflict, they had simply built better weapons and prepared for the next one. Admiral, his communications officer, interrupted his reading. The human government has sent a message. It is being broadcast on all frequencies. Vornath pulled up the transmission. A human female appeared on screen, older than Admiral Chen, with gray in her hair and wearing formal clothing. The translator identified her as Secretary General Maria Santos, the leader of Earth's unified government. People of the Galactic Empire, she began, her voice steady and clear. You came to our system demanding submission. You destroyed a civilian station and murdered 3,000 innocent people. You believed we would surrender. You were wrong." She paused, and her eyes seemed to look directly through the camera, directly at Vornath. "We are willing to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this conflict. We do not wish for more death. But make no mistake, if you attack our home world, if you threaten our families, we will resist with every breath in our bodies. We would rather die free than live as slaves. We give you 24 hours to withdraw your fleet. If you do not, we will consider it an act of war, and we will respond accordingly." The transmission ended. Vornath sat in silence for a moment, then opened a channel to his senior officers. "Analysis," he demanded. His tactical officer spoke first. "Admiral, our scouts report that the humans have been reinforcing their orbital defenses. They have placed weapons platforms around their home world. Judging by the energy signatures, they appear to be nuclear-based systems." "Nuclear weapons in orbit?" Vornath was shocked. "Do they not understand the danger? One malfunction and they could irradiate their own planet." "I do not believe they care, sir," the officer replied quietly. Vornath made his decision. "We did not come this far to retreat from primitives. Send the ultimatum. They have 6 hours to surrender, or we will begin orbital bombardment of military targets. If they still refuse, we will land ground forces." 6 hours later, Admiral Chen's face appeared on every Imperial ship's screen simultaneously. The human had hacked into their communications network. "Your ultimatum is rejected," Chen said simply. "Come and take it." The words were strange, but the meaning was clear. It was a challenge. The humans were daring the Empire to attack. Vornath gave the order. The Imperial fleet moved toward Earth, their weapons charging. The planet hung in space before them, blue and white and beautiful. Vornath could see the orbital stations, the satellites, the small defense ships arranged in a protective shell around the world. "Begin bombardment," he said. "Target only military installations. Minimize civilian casualties." The first salvo of plasma fire struck Earth's orbital platforms. Many were destroyed instantly, their crews dying before they knew what hit them. But the platforms fired back, launching missiles that struck Imperial ships. The missiles were primitive, but there were so many of them, and some of them got through. "Hull breach on Deck 15, someone shouted. "Seal bulkheads." Around the fleet, other ships reported damage. The humans were using their nuclear weapons, and while the Imperial shields could stop energy weapons, the physical force of a nuclear explosion still rocked the ships. It was like being hit by a hammer while wearing armor. The armor protected you, but you still felt the impact. "Ground forces, prepare for landing," Vornath ordered. "We will secure key cities and force their surrender." 100 Imperial landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere. They targeted major cities, military bases, and government centers. The humans had evacuated civilians from these areas, but the military remained. The first landing craft touched down in what humans called Beijing. The doors opened, and Imperial soldiers rushed out, expecting to secure the area quickly. Instead, they ran into prepared defenses that would have made any professional military proud. The humans had turned the streets into a maze of barricades and kill zones. Buildings had been rigged with explosives. Underground tunnels allowed human soldiers to appear and disappear like ghosts. And the humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the Imperial troops. Commander Thexal led his battalion through the ruins of a government complex. His soldiers were well trained, equipped with the best weapons the Empire could provide, and they had conquered dozens of worlds. But this was different. A human soldier appeared from behind rubble, fired a burst from their rifle, and disappeared before Thexal's troops could return fire. One of his soldiers went down screaming. The scream was cut short as another human, this one barely more than a child, threw an explosive device that killed 3 more Imperial soldiers. "Fall back to cover," Thexal ordered. His troops took shelter behind a collapsed building. "Where are they?" "Use the scanners." "Sir, the scanners are not working properly. The humans are using some kind of jamming technology, and they are in the tunnels beneath us. We cannot track them." A rocket streaked from a nearby window and struck one of their armored vehicles. The explosion sent shrapnel flying, wounding 2 more soldiers. Thexal tried to call for air support, but the human anti-aircraft systems were too effective. Any Imperial aircraft that flew low enough to provide close support was shot down. "This is wrong," one of his soldiers said, its voice high with stress. "They should be running. Why are they not running?" Thexal did not have an answer. His species, the Krellians, were herd animals. When faced with overwhelming force, their instinct was to submit to the stronger power. It was how their society worked, how their military worked, how their entire culture worked. Humans did not work that way. When faced with overwhelming force, they seemed to get angrier. They fought harder. They took insane risks. He watched as a human soldier, pinned down and with no way to escape, detonated an explosive that killed both himself and the 4 Imperial soldiers trying to capture him. The human could have surrendered. Instead, they had chosen death and taken enemies with them. "Pull back," Thexal ordered. "We need to regroup." But pulling back was not easy. The humans followed them, harassing their retreat, picking off stragglers. By the time Thexal's battalion reached the landing zone, he had lost 30% of his troops, and the humans still held the city. Similar reports came in from every landing site. Imperial forces were taking heavy casualties. Human soldiers refused to surrender even when surrounded. Worse, the human civilians were helping their military, providing supplies, information, and sometimes even fighting alongside the soldiers. On the space station serving as Vornath's command center, the Admiral reviewed the reports with growing despair. Ground forces were stalled. Orbital bombardment was hitting targets, but the humans had moved most of their military assets underground. The Imperial fleet was running low on ammunition and fuel, and then came the worst news of all. "Admiral," his science officer said, its voice shaking, "we have detected a massive energy spike from the human homeworld. They are launching something, no, multiple somethings, hundreds of them." "What kind of missiles?" "Not missiles, sir. They are too slow. They are more like drones or satellites. They are dispersing throughout the system." Vornath felt a chill run through his body. "Tactical assessment?" There was silence for a moment. Then the science officer spoke again, and Vornath could hear the fear in its voice. "Sir, we have just completed our analysis. The humans have reverse-engineered our shield technology. They have combined it with their nuclear weapons. These are shield-penetrating warheads. That is impossible. It took us centuries to develop that technology. Nevertheless, sir, the energy signatures match. The humans have created weapons that can bypass our shields." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen again. The human looked even more tired than before, but there was something else in its expression. Determination, resolve, and cold, hard anger. "Admiral Vornath," Chen said, "you came to our home, you killed our people. You have bombed our cities and sent your soldiers to occupy our land. We asked you to leave. We begged you to negotiate. You refused." Chen leaned forward. "So now we show you what humans do when we are truly threatened. Those satellites we just launched, they are weapons. They can destroy every ship in your fleet, and we will use them if you do not withdraw immediately." "You are bluffing," Vornath said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Are we?" Chen smiled, and it was a terrible smile. "Let me tell you something about humans, Admiral. When we are pushed to the edge, when our survival is threatened, we do not give up. We do not surrender. We become the monsters that our enemies fear. You wanted war? You have it. But you will not leave our system alive unless you leave right now." "Oh." Admiral Vornath stared at his tactical display, watching the hundreds of human weapons spreading throughout the Sol system. His fleet was surrounded, and his ground forces were trapped on a hostile world fighting an enemy that refused to die. He had 3 choices: fight and lose everything, surrender and face disgrace, or try one more assault and hope to break the human will. He chose to fight. "All ships," Vornath commanded, "target those human satellites. Destroy them before they can be used against us." The Imperial fleet opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up space. Many of the human satellites exploded in brilliant flashes, but there were so many of them and they were small and maneuverable. For every one destroyed, 3 more remained. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer shouted. The human satellites fired, and Vornath watched in horror as the missiles they launched went straight through his ship's shields. The shields tried to stop them, flickered and sparked, but the missiles passed through as if the shields were not even there. They struck Imperial hulls and detonated. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness of space. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles simply ceased to exist. Others were crippled, their engines dead, their life support failing. The Imperial fleet was being torn apart. "Recall all ground forces," Vornath ordered. "All ships, emergency withdrawal. Jump to hyperspace as soon as possible." But the humans were not done. As the Imperial ships tried to retreat, human vessels that had been hiding throughout the system revealed themselves. Small ships, many of them converted civilian craft, swarmed toward the retreating Imperial fleet. They were like wolves chasing wounded prey. The human ships fired everything they had. Old-fashioned missiles, railgun slugs, even simple kinetic weapons. Some human ships simply rammed into Imperial vessels, their crews sacrificing themselves to stop the invaders from escaping. It was madness. It was suicide. It was effective. Commander Thexal fought his way back to the landing craft with what remained of his battalion. Of the 300 soldiers he had led to Earth's surface, only 97 were left. The rest were dead or too wounded to move, and the humans were still attacking, still fighting, even as the Imperial forces tried to evacuate. A human soldier appeared on top of a building, carrying a weapon that looked homemade. The soldier fired, and the rocket struck a landing craft that was lifting off. The craft spun out of control and crashed, killing everyone aboard. "Move! Move!" Thexal shouted at his troops. They ran for the last remaining landing craft, firing behind them to keep the humans at bay. Thexal was the last one to board. As the doors closed, he saw human soldiers rushing forward, still trying to stop them, still fighting even though the battle was clearly lost. No, Thexal realized. The battle was not lost for the humans. They had won. The Imperial forces were running away. In orbit, what remained of the Imperial fleet made the jump to hyperspace. Of the 300 ships that had arrived at Earth, only 45 escaped. The rest were destroyed or too damaged to jump. Those ships and their crews were left behind, drifting in space or crashed on Earth's surface. The humans would capture them, study them, learn from them. Vornath sat in his damaged flagship as it limped through hyperspace. Around him, the bridge crew worked in silence, tending to the wounded and trying to keep the ship functional. The Admiral looked at the final casualty reports and felt sick. 85% of his fleet destroyed. Over 200,000 Imperial soldiers and crew members dead. And the humans? They had lost perhaps 50,000, maybe more. But they were still there, still defiant, still dangerous. He opened a secure channel to the High Command on Centaura Prime. When the faces of the council members appeared, they looked shocked. "Admiral," Qualix said, its colors shifting to shades of distress. "What happened?" "Your report said the humans were primitive." "They are primitive," Vornath replied, his voice hollow. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. But it does not matter. They do not fight like any species we have ever encountered. They do not surrender. They do not break. And they learn frighteningly fast." He transmitted the battle data, the recordings of human soldiers fighting to the death, the footage of civilians helping their military, the intercepted communications that showed humans coordinating attacks even after their command structure was destroyed. The council watched in silence. When the transmission ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, the head of the council, an ancient being named Sathrex, spoke. "We must sue for peace immediately. If we continue this war, they will not stop at defending their system. They will come for us." "Agreed," said another council member. "Contact the human government. Offer them whatever they want. Reparations, technology, formal apologies. Whatever it takes to end this." Vornath wanted to feel relieved, but he could not. "There is one more thing," he said. "We need to send someone the humans will trust to negotiate. Someone who tried to warn us. Someone who knows them." Everyone understood. Qualix sent the message to the neutral station where Zaxthor lived in exile. Within hours, the old warrior responded. He would serve as mediator, but only if the Empire agreed to meet all human demands without negotiation. The Council had no choice. They agreed. 3 months later, a very different meeting took place on a neutral station at the edge of human space. Admiral Chen represented Earth, Admiral Vornath represented the Empire, and Zaxthor stood between them, His forearms folded, his scarred face unreadable. The Empire agrees to the following terms. Zaxthor read from a data tablet. Full reparations for all damages and loss of life. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over the Sol system and any future colonies. A mutual defense pact between Earth and the Empire will share advanced technology with humanity as a gesture of goodwill. Chen nodded slowly. These terms are acceptable, but there is one more condition. Vornath closed his eyes, expecting the worst. What do you want? We want a promise, Chen said. A promise that this never happens again. Not to us, not to any other species. The Empire needs to change how it treats other worlds. That is not a term we can enforce, Vornath said. Then make it one you can enforce, Chen replied. Or the next time you start a war of conquest, you might find human ships standing with the species you are trying to subjugate. We may be new to this galaxy, Admiral, but we know what it is like to be bullied by a superior force. We will not let it happen to others. Zaxthor looked at Chen with something like respect in his eyes. Then he looked at Vornath. I told you. I told the Council. I warned everyone who would listen. Humans are not like other species. I know, Vornath said quietly. I know that now. We all know that now. The question is, what happens next? Chen stood and walked to the window of the station, looking out at the stars. What happens next is we rebuild. We mourn our dead. We learn from this, and we make sure that the galaxy understands something important. Earth wants peace. We have always wanted peace, but if you bring war to our home, we will end you. The treaty was signed that day. News of Earth's victory spread throughout the galaxy within weeks. Dozens of species sent diplomatic missions to the Sol system. Some came offering trade. Others came offering alliance. All of them came with respect and even fear. The Galactic Empire did change, though slowly. The council members who had voted for the invasion were removed from power. New laws were passed requiring diplomatic contact before military action. And the Empire's military academies began teaching about the Battle of Sol, about the humans who had refused to surrender, about the cost of underestimating an enemy. 1 year after the treaty was signed, Zaxthor stood on the observation deck of a human space station, looking out at Earth below. Admiral Chen joined him carrying 2 glasses filled with a human beverage Chen called whiskey. To peace, Chen said, offering 1 glass to Zaxthor. To peace, Zaxthor replied, taking the glass. They drank in silence for a moment, then Zaxthor spoke. I have a question. Why did you ask for the Mutual Defense Pact? You could have demanded that the Empire stay away from human space forever. Instead, you tied yourself to us, Chen smiled slightly. Because despite everything, I believe in giving people a second chance. The Empire made a mistake. You tried to warn them. Now you have a chance to make it right. And if you need help in the future, we will be there. As if to test that promise, a message arrived at that very moment. The Empire's outer colonies were under attack by an unknown enemy the Empire called the Void Horde. Preliminary reports suggested an invasion force of thousands of ships. The Empire's military was still recovering from the Battle of Sol. They needed help. Chen read the message and looked at Zaxthor. It seems your people need us sooner than expected. Will you help? Zaxthor asked. After everything we did to you? Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pulled up a communication panel and began recording a message to the human government. Secretary General Santos, this is Admiral Chen. The Empire has requested assistance against an external threat. I recommend we honor our treaty obligations and send military support immediately. He sent the message and turned to Zaxthor. We made a promise, and humans keep their promises. Your people will have our help within the week. Zaxthor felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Chen said with a